I wanted to show them that not just that this is what I'm all about, but that this is what this is all about. That it could be this layered and this engulfing and encompassing. It's the difference between, you know, a chance encounter on the train where someone bumps you or a chance encounter on the train where you had the most poignant conversation of your day you didn't expect to have. I wanted to recreate a moment for people beyond my experience, where sharing my experience made them take the time to be in the experience.
Microphone check, 1, 2, what is this? It's the 5'7" assassin in the podcast business. I am your host, Rohan Patra, the rap music plug at your service. Here we are again at the end of a rainbow. Throughout my experience listening to music, one of the most important life lessons I've learned is that of patience. I've had too many instances where an album initially just didn't grab me, but then as I continued to revisit it and give it an open and curious mind, I fell in love with it, months, sometimes years after it initially dropped. Art has a way of connecting you to the present. That's why I love it so much. And there's no better example than the new album from today's guest, Cavalier, Different Type Time. An album that, as you will come to learn throughout this episode, has a very unique relationship with time and the idea and concept of being present. So in this episode, Cavalier and I have a sprawling conversation covering the creative thinking behind this rich audio-visual experience of Different Type Time, what informed his unique career path as an artist, the meaning behind participating in hip-hop culture, and much, much more. This conversation was jam-packed with insight and gems. You do not want to miss it. The Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV is the remedy to the I don't have anything good to listen to problem. Through in-depth artist interviews, album reviews, and general rap commentary on the best that the underground rap scene has to offer, this is your one-stop shop to knowing what to add to your queue, play next, or pop into your record player. Welcome to the show. Cavalier, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. How you feeling?
I'm great. Very good. Very good. I'm appreciative of the time. I know you had some little stupid plane delays, so
Yeah, man.
glad this worked
Story
out.
of my life, man. I live in the airport, man.
And yeah, I've been highly anticipating this new album for a while now, and I can't say 100%, but I feel like the first time I heard about it was actually when Woods was on the show. I think this was, yeah, May 2023, and he was just talking about all these Backwoodz releases, and he was like really speaking highly of this new record, saying this is like your best work. And so yeah, it's been a while, and I'm really happy to say it delivered. And so from your vantage point, this dropping now 8 days ago, how's it been?
hmm
How's the release felt so far for you?
It's felt good. I think I'm still processing it. Like there's been a lot of moving parts. It's also a unique release to tear out, because of it's a longer project and there's a lot of visuals, but I feel good. I'm working on stepping back and letting it take on its own life because it's been a long time coming. So a part of me wants to, walk into school every day and sit in the classroom with it too. You know what I mean?
No, that's a good analogy. I feel you on that. Yeah, I think whenever I have an artist like coming on the show and I'm prepping for the interview, I'll always revisit their catalog, brush up on some albums maybe I wasn't like as super familiar with, dive into their history, all that good stuff. And with you, it's no different. However, I will say that it felt extra rewarding because
Mm,
this process allowed me to learn about you more as a person and dig into your older records. And I just grew to really appreciate your artistry that much more.
mm.
Checking out albums like Chief, giving those some revisiting, all of those. And it's really interesting the path that you've taken so far in your career. Because as like Woods actually put really eloquently in like the press release and the write-up for this record, you're a rapper that people felt was going to be quote unquote next to blow, and private stock was a big moment, and then people were waiting for that next thing, that next big record. And you've been really fiercely independent, releasing music on your own time, taking time between releases, and also handling the business side of your art in a particular way. And one of the most notable, examples of this is the way you're pricing the record. That's something that I clocked, a lot of people clocked. I think
Hmm.
it's like 99 Canadian for the vinyl on on Backwoodz, and I think it's like 70 USD.
Hmm.
I'm curious, like, why did you decide to price these records in the way that you did?
Well, different type time is only the second vinyl release from me as
Hmm.
as a solo artist, and well, numerically, I just wanted it to be seven. There's that aspect. I tend to be pretty intentional about things, so it's basically I couldn't let it go for $7, you know. Um, and also I knew what we were offering, not just in assigning a monetary value to the art, because that's a whole nother discussion. But in terms of a physical product, I knew it was a beautiful record. I knew it was a double vinyl. I knew it was an hour's worth of music. And also, I knew that it was a product that I was delivering through Backwoodz platform. And I wanted to encourage our audience to essentially buy into the platform. I think Woods has spent a lot of time, 20 years, building up Backwoodz Studios as a label. And the fact that it's still here is something that I think we really need to cherish. That period, when Woods decided to start that, probably wasn't the ideal time to start a record label. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And he weathered that storm so that a lot of us could prosper. And whether I do multiple records with Backwoodz or one, I want my contribution to be a cornerstone to what he's built that's so lasting and hopefully everlasting. I know he cares, and I know Elucid cares. I know Sharif cares. I know, you know what I mean? And so do I, very much so. Private Stock was put out completely independent and it was $50. It was my first solo vinyl. There were some people that were like, oh, unsure. There were labels that were interested in me that were hesitant when I broke down how this needed to go on a business dynamic. It
Hmm.
was kind of like they were saying they're willing to bank on me as an artist, but not willing to actually put their money where their mouth is. And to me, that's not a plan. That means you're willing to own piece of me without investing in me, you
Yeah.
know? And a lot of those labels after the fact, had a slice of humble pie when the record sold out in 8 days. You know what I mean? So now that private stock resells on other sites for upwards of $400, um, I still am signaling that, we make art. It's not just about a vinyl. There's a lot of people who purchase our vinyl who don't even have a record player. There's a lot of people who purchase our tapes who don't have a cassette player. I don't have a cassette player.
Hmm.
In fact, I sold the last Lemonade Redux tape. It was ordered on my way to this interview. Someone in London bought it, right? So right now, the only physical merchandise I have from my catalog is Different Type Time. This has been the track record. Chief didn't even come out on record. It came out as a gold bar USB that
Yeah,
was
that's
on
crazy. That's really cool,
right.
by the way.
And I released that in 2014. That was my first formal release, and I'm seeing people do flameless, USB lighters and all that now, 10 years later. So I'm I'm standing on that. It's not about the money. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? I've offered someone got on my Instagram and they questioned about the price. They didn't even do it in a rude way. And I hit them up. I was like, if it's about the money, I'll give you $20 to buy the record. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because the cassette and the CD are regular price.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying? So it's not like I didn't think about, I'm not limiting access to my record. It's already a limited pressing,
Yeah.
you know, and there's only so many records that Backwoodz can press at their size. So this is a statement to the industry at large. Arm& Hammer and Billy Woods have had a remarkable run of releases, and we chatter about it online. But are we participating in these legacies? And that's kind of where I'm coming from. So that's why it's priced the way it's priced. Because you buy seven of weed in a lot of cities and pay the same price. That's very temporal. But this
Hmm.
isn't. It's a physical recording of my physical voice You know what I mean? And that's why. So it's about that ritual that I'm maintaining those things about.
I mean, you said a lot there. I think one part what you mentioned about how there was a good amount of time early on in the Backwoodz history where, it's they're really putting themselves on a limb, like going out on a limb. It wasn't necessarily the most profitable thing. Like I remember in that really well written kind of like overall Backwoodz write up, that big like front cover thing on Pitchfork that Dylan Green did. I know that's
Mm,
something Woods specifically said. History was all me dropped, and he's like, if this doesn't work, it's
I'm
over.
done.
Yeah, like I can't
Yep.
continue this. Like they were in the red for a while, and so I think that kind of approach you're taking is really admirable. And I think the other part is that I just think I hope at least I can tell, from some folks in like the patron community for this show and just people that, tend to like artists like you and are really tapped into the indie scene. I do hope they understand that and are more likely to understand that people also like they aren't just robots. Like they
Mhm.
want to make really good art and you want to keep it receiving it. Like you have to sustain them. You need to contribute something. Whether it be like money for a record or it's just buying it digitally or spreading the word, whatever it is, it's not just for you to take, you know,
Right. And it's
without
not like I
anything.
dropped. Yeah, I didn't drop a $70 to $100 record 5 years in a row. It's been a 6 year gap from audiences hearing from me formally, right?
Hmm.
So you mean to tell me you wouldn't subscribe $10 a year, $11 a year for 6 years? You know what I mean? That's why I hear the chitter chatter. We talk about streaming culture. People get these high and mighty stances, but then when it's time to put action to it, that's what I'm saying. I'm like, are we on a different type time or are we not?
Yeah, and I'm sure you mentioned it like about that idea of being in the kind of overconsumption age, streaming age. The attention span of people these days is definitely like reduced. The al not only just album sizes have reduced in a lot of ways, but just the way people sit with music is just a lot different. And with
Mhm.
that in mind, thinking back to the success of Private Stock, which dropped 2018, the 6 year gap between then and now, did you, I guess maybe like midway through this time or right before dropping this new record, like did you expect to be held down by fans for over 6 years between these major solo records? Like, did you expect fans to be this patient with you?
No, and I didn't know that I was gonna experience this gap between releases.
Hmm.
Maybe I felt a bit how Woods felt when he prepared History Will Absolve Me. I dropped Private Stock. I'm not sure if I had specific expectations on what I wanted to happen, but some of the expectations that were there were present when I dropped Chief. The collective that was around me to support me making Chief, they thought that was the record, that was going to put me over the top. They're like, you got a Raekwon feature on here?
Yeah.
Like, people don't even know who you are. Like, you have some of the best producers, emerging producers on this record. But that's because behind the scenes, a lot of the rappers and producers knew who I was. And I've held that kind of a space for a long time. And that's what Woods was referring to in the bio and write up about the album. A lot of people's favorite rappers have known who I was since I was young. So, you know, the gap, I dropped Lemonade Redux in 2019. And I think in its presentation, some people misinterpreted it to be a deluxe, like it was just Lemonade with a couple bonus tracks.
Hmm.
And that couldn't be farther from the case. I took an EP and made it an LP, and it was now, you know, almost double the length, a whole different arrangement. I expanded that world. And I let that cook, and I stuck till this day. I still haven't allowed the songs that were added onto Lemonade Redux to be in streaming. You know what I mean? They're still either only on the tape or only when you purchase the digital download. And that was a message to those who were listening, that I really appreciated them and that I wanted something for us. You know,
Hmm.
I intended to work on a different album than Different Type Time after that. I don't know how much I can speak on that now, but it involved three pretty well-known producers. It was going to be a three-part album,
No, interesting.
but it didn't. shape up the way I thought. And well, I didn't know that's what was happening, but I put myself on residency in Oakland, California to work on that. And instead somehow ended up working on this. And it wasn't planned, but it was much more in tune with how I was feeling and what I was doing. And the record was done um pretty much by 2022. You know what I mean? But now is about finding a home for it to where it could
Yeah.
be, finding out where it could live. And that took time and I was patient with that. And also of course, just on my personal life, after private stock, I spoke about this before with someone. When you're releasing projects completely independent, and this is completely independent. It's not like I was quietly getting funding from some label offshoot or something
Hmm.
like that. Um, I really was doing it by myself and with the help of artists around me. And I around that period with Chief and with Private Stock and with Lemonade Redux, I would work the project through the year. That was my initial way of fighting back against this very temporary consumptive type process that we engage in as listeners. And now I'm seeing the industry shift to a model like that, where they talk about cascade releases and all of that,
Mm.
tearing out. And I'm like, I've been doing that. You know, Chief was the beginning of me also showcasing to the audience that I create multimedia and that these are experiences, that these are experiences I want to last, that they're visual and they're audio, that they're also tactile.
Yeah.
That's why I did the USB lighter that you could listen to my album and you could light your J or incense with it, because I still very much believe in functional art. But the pandemic played a factor. Me becoming a father became a factor, and I had to put my headspace in line with me feeling comfortable putting music out into the world with these frameworks set up that are not designed to benefit artists.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that's so well said. And when you talk about the support you receive from artists, I mean, I think it's very notable that you've gotten some really big cosigns from people like, Ish, Shabazz Palaces, Lupe, obviously the folks from Backwoodz, but there's so many more to name. Your name, even with people not being directly tapped into your solo work, have heard something from you or heard
Mm-hmm,
someone
mm-hmm,
mention Cavalier before.
mm-hmm.
And that idea of being a rapper's rapper or an artist's artist has been something that's floated around in conjunction with your name. And I guess I wonder, like, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think your music particularly resonates with other artists? And like, how do you balance that with trying to also expand and, expand your wings and get more of a larger listener base?
I'm working on that balance, man. I don't know if I have the magic bullet for that one. I feel really happy that that's the case, that artists, particularly artists that are all, renowned, right? They all are critically acclaimed artists, people who inspire myself and other artists of my ilk. It's I don't know if there's anything more fulfilling than getting the recognition from your artistic peers, because it's less fickle. Like fanfare is very fickle. I don't look at people who listen to our music as like fans. I may use that word occasionally just because it's easy to use, but I look at them as like community members.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? I look at them as I want us to be participants. That this is the music is just a byproduct of the culture, and we all are participating in it. And I happen to be administering that particular byproduct, but there's others, whether it's graffiti or whatever. And it doesn't even have to just be the classic elements of hip hop. There's a lot of ways I think right now that we participate in the culture. Some that are subtle and some that are more identifiable. But you know, I yeah, I'm still mitigating that space between being an artist that's spoken about in these, higher spaces or more behind the scenes spaces where hip hop's elite gather and record, and the average listener who might not know who I am. And some of that is because I didn't spend a lot of time chasing notoriety. My
Hmm.
dream has always been to be in the canon of the great ones. You know what I mean? Like I wanted to I wanted to be one of those artists that people are debating, that people are like, yo, he's in there with the greats. That
Yeah.
well after I'm gone, people are looking back on it. That my son, when he's older, could look back on the canon of work that I put out there for to the world and for the culture. And as noble as a pursuit that might be, you don't always get your 15 minutes that way. So now it's about how do I, now that I've gotten some of these accolades and the artists you mentioned, what's great about them is that they didn't make any bones about acknowledging me publicly. There's other artists who are Grammy winners and hip hop legends, so I know for a fact know me, have met me, heard my music, listened
Hmm.
to it, borrowed from it even. But I really feel great that these other artists have been like, oh, it's not even about my ego. We're all doing great things, and here's another great contributor to what we're doing. So I'm still finding that balance. I'm still finding it.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine a reason why you seem to really get that love from artists is just how defiantly committed you are to your own vision. Like that's just one of the things that I think is like a key characteristic of how you've approached your music and your art. And I mean, as an artist, I imagine that's something that people can really appreciate. And then especially people who have been in the industry can see how cutthroat it is, can see how just like, as you said, just how like not conducive it is to actually succeeding in a lot of ways. And for someone to do it and achieve some sort of success and actually produce good art, like I think that's a big reason why people seem to kind of gravitate towards you.
I hope so. I mean, you never know what it is. I mean, I've had a lot of interesting encounters. I've had Kanye adjacent people, like
Mm,
really adjacent, reach out to me and be like, "Yo, the moment it starts making money, give me a call." You know what I mean?
mm-hmm,
So now it's like, well, how much money does it need to make? You know what I mean? What
mm-hmm.
does that mean? What is the benchmark for success or impact? And now we're all casually accepting being trained to measure the value of these things by like I clicked like, and 1,000 other people clicked like, so that must mean it's important. And it, that's not untrue, but I was like, that can't be the only, you know, that can't be the only ingredient.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Especially when there's so much discourse about other people expressing, even the listeners, like, nah, you know, I treat my albums like movies. They're like movies for me, the way I create them. So if I'm a director and you get to cherry pick just one scene out my movie, did you get the movie? You know what I mean? You're just watching that one scene, and that's kind of like what playlist culture does to our art. You know?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I totally agree with that. Like, I've always like, I've just become even more of an album listener. Like, even like artists that
Mhm.
I love that I'm like, oh, I'm totally gonna like almost immediately cop their record, even potentially when it's out. If they drop a single, like I'm mostly not listening to it. Like unless it's like
Mm,
kind of if I'm told it's part of something coming, like I'll be like I'll just wait. I just
yeah.
don't. And it's also like it's also me responding to the same kind of like market forces that we're all talking about, except I just kind of take a different route. I also just feel like I don't have time. Like I don't have time to just be like, let me play one song. It's like I want to play, if I'm gonna take the time out to listen to something, I want to have like 30 minutes, kind of 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes of my time, and I don't have to think about it. I can just kind of live in that world. That's just kind of personally how I like to listen to music, whereas I don't want to have to keep kind of like going on playlists, selecting individual tracks. That's just not really my thing anyway.
Yeah. It just, yeah, I want to be a part of a revival for album experiences, these artists and it's kind of like what you spoke to earlier. Now that we have these frameworks, you have artists creating in ways to only support the framework, not to support the art. You know what I mean? So an artist can come out and drop 100 garbage songs and dump
Yeah.
them on streaming, right? And that's gonna pump up the algorithm for them. And you know, that's cool. That's just not that's not the depth in the pool that I swim in.
Yeah, and you speak about the culture with a particular, I think, very obvious adoration and respect. And something
Mhm.
I've really appreciated about your music is that you really try to represent hip hop as a culture in a way that's like very much an imperative of your music, of your art. And so, like how do you view your role as an artist, like in the terms of like what kind of impact you want to have to others when they consume your art?
That's a great question. A few. Maybe it's a time capsule. It's an archive. It is a it's a book in the canon, so to speak, and hopefully it's a teaching experience, maybe. I think the artists that I tend to respect the most are students of the culture. Even if I don't like their music, there's like our top artists, all of them, the ones we're debating currently, let's say, right? The quote unquote big three, they're all clearly students of the culture. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
so clear, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And none of them hide it. None of them make any attempts to hide that. In fact, they celebrate that in their own ways, whether it's Drake giving homage to other songs through his songwriting, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can tell that he studied rappers from Houston in the 90s, you know
100%.
what I mean? Whether it's Kendrick Lamar implementing Juvenile's flow on a record or nodding at Bone Thugs and Harmony's uh, musical approach on a record. Like that's all intentional decisions that he's making. And the same for J. Cole. You could tell that J. Cole um is also a byproduct of the culture. You know what I mean? And I don't know if you'll find a great in hip hop who wasn't also a student of the culture. And when I say student of the culture, I think that's layered too, because a lot of, particularly now, you'll run into people and they'll be like, oh, I don't fuck with hip hop. I don't really, that's not my thing, right? And that's cool. But they're attempting to express that they don't rock with the music. But then you listen to how they talk, you see how they're dressed, you see how parts of their worldview is formed, and all of that shit is hip hop.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, what do you mean you don't fuck with hip hop? You just said peace when you pulled up on me. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of like I want to be a part of a line that's unbroken.
I love that. And yeah, you're so right about that. Like the way people dress, the vernacular, it just goes without saying. It's so related and directly
Yeah.
draws from that.
We're gonna
Yeah.
look back in these times when we're old and realize that hip hop's impact is, I mean, and this is there's obviously a lineage thing here, but this the same way that jazz formulated what America's cultural identity is, because jazz is something that is born in America, right? They were playing music in early America, but it was like music from Europe,
Mm-hmm.
music from Africa, right? Music from the right, but it required everyone being together on American soil and the things that were happening to birth blues, right? Which begat jazz. You know, that's how these things emerge, right? And yes, hip hop is in that legacy, but it also is its own milestone moment because of the impact it has not just on American identity, but global culture.
Global, yeah.
There's no who's earning more revenue, who's making more impact. Like I this is kind of a tangent. I ended up working with a former mayoral candidate of the city of Oakland, and one of his funders and one of the persons and companies involved with their campaign, I guess privately started looking into those in their war room. And it was like, you have this guy, Cavalier, working with you on your campaign. I looked him up and he's a rapper, you know. And shout out Seneca Scott, he was basically like, name a major political moment in the modern era that hasn't had a rapper a part of it. And that gentleman was like,
Mm.
I stand corrected, right? Whether it's Jeezy directly campaigning for Obama under the anthemic "My President is Black," Obama hadn't even been elected yet, right?
Oh
Or
shit,
it's
that's true. I
You
didn't
see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
We
was
talk
younger
about the
then. That's
magic
true.
of our music, you know what I mean? Or whether it's Jay-Z rapping about being in the White House with his wife, whether it's or Kanye West calling out George Bush in the most memorable and iconic way ever, to the point that decades later, George Bush was like, that was one of the worst moments of my presidential
Yeah.
career, right? So where is a rapper? And that's part of that BS where we try to minimize like the the scope of art that comes from this, and there's a lot of racial undertones in that, quite frankly, in my opinion. Nas didn't graduate middle school, but he's clearly one of the writers of a generation. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if there's what art form is more critiqued or broken down than hip hop. What art form does the lyrics matter more than hip hop? And yet, paradoxically, the people who make it are often cast as the most undeserving, the most uneducated. And look how we're moving the needle, cultures across the world.
Yeah, I always find that paradox right there of saying, that like rap crap is just a bunch of dumb nonsense, yet lyrics are simultaneously by far, like it's just no debate. It's the most
Come on.
analyzed, the most dense and it just all bent like, centers around lyrics. It's just yeah, it blows my mind sometimes. But there's a lot of dissonance
Mm-hmm.
in a lot of aspects of the world. And keeping with like kind of the political angle here, one of the topics that you've paid particular interest in and have spoken about is the idea of like bringing back weed spots. It's been a stance that you've
Mm-hmm.
proudly espoused for years now. And this is a perspective that I feel like I have a grasp on, but I'm really curious to kind of learn more about because like where I'm from, I'm in Toronto, so
Mm-hmm.
Canada. We've had legal weed for I actually should have checked this before. I feel like it's been since 2019 or 2018. I could be
Mm-hmm.
wrong. I think it was before the pandemic for sure. I think 2018, 2017. So, yeah, so that's kind of where I come from in some of my perspective. But yeah, I'm curious to like learn more about why that is your stance. I have an idea, but like to.
It's a few things. One, some of the spacing between my releases of art are definitely aligned with the fact that I was making certain choices in my life as a younger person. I mean, how can I say this? I guess I was involved in black market industry. You know what I mean? And I put a lot of energy there, maybe too much at certain chapters. You know, now I can put more energy into these things. And simultaneously, America has changed, right? The Americas have changed, right? North America has changed. And I don't know if the legalization of cannabis is unilaterally a good thing because it's predicated on hip hop and a lot of other American cultural things, making it, we like the hippie movement, you know, smoke, we talk about smoking blunts, like that's a hip hop thing, right?
Hmm.
Even that's right. So all of that had to happen and for how many decades, right? That marijuana has been like hush hush, but right in front of your face. And now that corporate America can buy into it, it's all good. Now it's like Starbucks. Meanwhile, there's
Hmm.
people whose lives were ruined, families ruined. These draconian drug laws have, torn apart communities. And as far as cannabis is concerned, I don't know if that was deserving of some of that, right? It's not a class A drug. It's not, whatever. So, it has medicinal effects among other things. So the whole idea of a weed spot refers to many places, particularly in North America, where you had to procure your cannabis discreetly and illegally,
Hmm.
right? And now it's being shopped to you like it's all good. You can go get it out the vending machine, but what is lost there? Well, the same thing that happens when you could have gotten your fruit from your farmer's market or you can get it from Monsanto, right? And we out here with Monsanto weed right now, covered in pesticides, covered in dense metals, riddled with dense metals and shit. And it doesn't, and it's weird because we're in a stage as an industry where we could grow the healthiest and whatever, the best cannabis ever, right? But we're not. We're taking this capitalist approach the same way we do ground beef or corn. It's now
Hmm.
that now, right? And corn is a cash crop. Cannabis always was a cash crop. You know what I'm saying? It's a form of currency too, in that regard. On the Chief album, shout out to Zion Lex, Abdiel Ben Levy, he gives a presentation about cannabis in the Torah. You know what I'm saying? And I had him speak. That's not a found recording. That's a phone call. He's talking to me.
So
When
that's
I
on
when you
the
hear
that's on like the second last track or the last track, right?
that's on the last track of Chief called Philosopher's
Yeah,
Stone.
yeah, that was very interesting.
You know,
That's a
most
phone
people you hear on
call?
the records, that's a phone call because when
Wow.
people hear people on my records, 9 times out of 10, they're talking to me. I don't go just download random sound bites from YouTube. I mean, I've been on productions where that's, your
Hmm.
mind sounds and that's part of it. But most times you hear people talking on my record, they're talking to me. They're talking to me. That's somewhere I actually was, or someone was actually talking to me. And that's part of that archive,
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, I digress. You know, the weed thing, it's real polarizing, man. You know, so I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I'm reminding people it's a conversation piece. It wasn't just a hoodie. It was kind of like everything I do. I wanted to provoke some thought about what we were really doing and the choices we're making. The same way with the record. You know, yeah,
Yeah.
it's $70. Okay, buy this. You're gonna go buy that though? You're gonna go buy Monsanto weed for $70 when you
Mm-hmm.
visit a state where it's legal, right? Okay. And you had your fun and now it's gone. My album's not gonna give you cancer though.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? It provokes some thought though. You know what I mean? So that's
I,
kind of where there's a lot, and I know a lot behind the scenes, some of which I can't speak on because it'll really be polarizing. But you know, shout outs to Mary Pryor. I had a conversation with Mary Pryor from Canaclusive, who's an advocate and someone who provides information in our communities about cannabis. And one day I was on a phone call with her off the record, and we were venting about really terrible things that are happening in the cannabis industry. And she's super informed, and she's been an advocate for farming and just health and wellness for people in general. And I said to her, I was like, "Yo, Mary, why don't you say that on your platform? Why don't you come out here and put people on?" And she was like, "Because don't nobody protect black women." And she
mm,
said that, and I was like, "You're absolutely right.
yeah.
I can't put it on her to put herself on the pyre to deliver information to people who don't always want to use it, you know." So what I can do though is spark dialogue so that hopefully it becomes a one domino in the chain of like, wait a minute, let me be a bit more informed on my choices. The same way we are about fucking artisanal whatever the fuck, or about which Jordans are more valuable than
Mm-hmm.
another. You know, we're quick when it's some shit like that to consume, but it's like, yo, nah, man, this is all tied together here, yo. We got to kind of step back and really think about like how you doing this. So that's what that was about.
I find this really fascinating because I think what you did right there, even just in this little piece that you when you explained it, like that is sparking thought that I haven't thought about. Because to be honest, the entire angle that you're speaking on about the health kind of part of it, like how this is created, that's something that truly didn't really come to my mind, even when this first like legalization came to mind. The more common things you hear about when you consider this topic of legalization of weed is more about like related to crime, related to you know, how it could potentially, you know, raise funds for the government, whatever it could be.
Mhm.
And so I think you're raising a really important point, and I think this is actually something that I don't think you did mention here, but I was looking at your website and looking at that hoodie, and you have like a bit of a write-up. And one
Mhm.
thing that I truly never thought of, which was like, and actually you did kind of mention it, which is this like thinking about this as like taking weed out of the equation. Just think about like any product. There were people that generated demand, built like customer relationships, literally did like what in any other business would be like sales work, and you
Mhm.
freaking created demand, created an entire market to where people want this shit. They want to buy this shit on the regular. And then lots of those people either end up in jail or, and even just at bare minimum, when this was legalized, they just got nothing for it. Like they created all the work and got
Yep.
no like recoupment for any monetary thing. And then, yeah, these corporations can just be like, thanks for all that work, buddy.
It's called the American way, man. That's
Yeah.
how America was built. It's called slavery. You know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
I'm like, yo, maybe it's me. I tend to, I don't know if I'm neurodivergent or whatever the new shit is. I tend to not think so linearly. Like it's kind of like a constellation. And I'm like, oh, it's like that. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I felt about all of this shit. And a lot of the opinions I had on it and the fact that I was really committed to them, it wasn't popular, right?
Hmm.
Because I doubled down on that. Even when it came to the decisions I made as a rapper, I was like, I'm not doing that shit, man. You know, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
In the blog era, it required some of my peers to kind of, I didn't want to come off like I had a chip on my shoulder, but I was a newer artist and everybody was like doing their best to get validated by people who didn't create anything. You know what I'm saying? And now those people were somehow gatekeepers in the culture, and we're building them up. The industry became more and more bloated with all of these middlemen who charge artists for services and shit like that, but create nothing. You know what I'm saying? And it was strangely, it was implanted in a lane that was supposed to be for artists who were existing outside of the industry framework,
Yeah.
right? We're not signed with record deals, and now you got like the blogosphere validating who's popular, and that was cool. but I used to some of those same artists, and maybe it was because I was in a black market space, but I was like, I don't got no money though. Yeah, this blog just said you cool. None of my niggas listen to you,
Mm-hmm.
and you're broke. You know what I'm saying? So it took me a while to kind of like wrap my head around that because even in that era, what people were telling me to put on the forefront to advance myself was shit that I wasn't invested in. They were like, yo, you gotta look. People want to see you. Well, I was like, I want them to hear me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Or they would be like, yo, you got to put yourself out there more. You got to do, you got to be on America's Got Talent or whatever the fuck. And I'm not knocking any of that stuff, but I was like, nah, that's not what I make.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of like with the record. I was like, you don't got to buy my $70 vinyl. There's other things you can buy, including with my music on it. You can buy the CD, you can buy the, or not fuck with it at all. But I'm like, yo, you could buy, like I jokingly said on my, well, not so jokingly, but on my Instagram, I was like, yo, you could buy the dirt weed or you could buy the high grade. And don't get mad that I came with high grade.
Yeah.
You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? This
No,
shit is high
facts.
grade, bro. It's not like I asked people to buy a record and I was on here slacking. I'm for real the fuck rapping on this shit. Dolo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't get 100 big name features, none of that shit. There's no rap features on my record. I'm holding it up. I'm gonna show you I could pull this train with the rope in my teeth by my fucking self if I have to do that to show you that it's real. But I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it one time, and I'm gonna show y'all. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what the energy was there.
Yeah, man, I totally respect that. And yeah, I just think to wrap that part up, I think you are doing a good job creating like a conversation because there are some really interesting things to consider with that whole concept of legalization. But going now back to the music, before Different Type Time dropped, you did drop Black Cottonwood with Quelle. Obviously,
Completely
he's been
unplanned. That was a completely unplanned record.
yeah. I was curious like how that came up. I swear I saw like a tweet. Maybe it was from Quelle, maybe it was from you like a month before it dropped, a couple weeks before it dropped, and then it was just there. And so just thinking about Quelle, he's obviously played a huge role in your career. Like how's his impact been not only on just your career development, but also your artistic development and like what you put out?
Quelle Chris is the proof that I'm not insane. That's what that is, man. To when you're choosing this road that artists like him, Woods, Elucid, Pink Seafood, a lot of us, it's not the fast track to success because it's built on things that are real. And truth isn't always popular or marketable. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I'm doubling down so adamantly about all of this stuff because it's not just about me. It's like I'm a component in a way. Maroof, Fly Anakin, I could go on and on. These are artists who I know in person. I know what they're putting into this work. But Quelle specifically, one, I believe in higher powers in the universe, and it was pretty much kismet in how I even found Quelle. So there was that, and I wanted to honor that and how I met him. I had one phone call with Quelle, and until this day, when I tell the story, I tell people I remember where I was standing when I had it. I hadn't met him yet. We're separated by 3,000 miles, and that one phone call, I knew. I felt like we both knew. I was like, this brother's gonna be in my life. You know
Wow.
what I mean? It was that real. And also, when Quelle came, and I went to go see him, and that was a pivotal moment. And after that, he returned the favor. He flew to New York to see me. And when he came to see me, he landed hours after Hurricane Sandy had breezed through New York.
Wow.
It was like it was a miracle his flight even was allowed to make it through. It was
Yeah, for
almost like
real.
he's like we had made these plans. I brought him out for a show in Brooklyn, and it was Obliv as well was on that bill
Dope.
and Black Spade, and somehow they all made it into town. The venue contractually held us to still do the show, even though there was no public transportation and people were fucked up. I was like, oh, this is ridiculous. And people walked, man. People came out to the show. And I was like, something's happening here, man. You
Mm.
know what I mean? So Quelle and I were now in New York at my place. And I didn't fully grasp this, but I guess that was the beginning of him fulfilling his relationship
Yeah.
with Mellow Music. And I was already working on the Chief album. That was part of why I reached out to Quale. And he turns around and submits the project we did together, Niggas is Men, as his first contractual album with Mello. I had no idea Quelle was going to do that. I don't know if he did. You know what I'm saying? And that's just kind of how we are. I think we merge in the space where we're both people who are going to create something anyway. And we recorded the bulk of Niggas is Men in my house. Like we were recording in my bedroom, like that type of shit. I had no idea. And it was the first time, a label I got like an advance or something, sent to
Mm.
me. I was like, oh, okay. People knew about me in Brooklyn. I definitely had my demo had given me a little bit of a cult following, but the record with Quelle put me on different radars. And he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to allow me to co-pilot his kind of formal, debut in that sense. So yeah, man, it's yeah, it's a lot happened there. Just and also, quite frankly, and I've told Quelle this, looking back, I think he may have potentially saved my life, man. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying? Because in that period, I was participating in things that I thought would I'm trying to pick my words carefully here. I thought the things that I was participating in would prevent financial need being a block to what I wanted to do as an artist. Because I saw that happening a lot. Like artists who were really talented who couldn't get ahead because they had no financial support. Because
Right.
that's the game we're in. And I was like, nah, that ain't me. I'm not gonna let money stop me from creating. But what I was doing to get the money and make the money put me in danger.
Right.
And by the time Quelle came to New York, what I didn't realize is that I was off balance. I was spending way more time doing that stuff than creating. I was in the street like 10, 12 hours a day when Quelle showed up in Brooklyn. And one day he was like, yo, bro, I need you here, like to finish these tracks. And it was only then that it dawned on me, like, yo, I allowed this shit to grow unbridled. Like I'm really in the street all day, and the Niggas is Men album pulled me back. Like it really pulled me back and recentered me back. Like, nah, the focus is this. The money's gonna come, you know. So that I'm gonna forever honor that.
I mean, the thought process of what you're describing, I think, is so like understandable. So it really takes a real force and a real person giving you an opportunity like that, like Quelle did to, as you said, like reel you back. That's beautiful, man.
Yeah, man.
And that brings us to this new record. Obviously, we've talked a lot about like kind of what got you here, decide what you kind of yeah got you here to 2024 where this album's out. What made this moment and partnering with Backwoodz Studios specifically feel right for you when it came to an album that you clearly worked so hard on?
Sometimes you make something and it becomes everything you hoped for more than you realized, right? So specifically, like I made this project, it was a lesson and a ritual and an experiment on me getting comfortable with myself and the timing that I was comfortable with. And then it became almost like a living metaphor for that compounded, whether it was the timing of the release, the timing for the opportunity to partner with Backwoodz, like all of that was in alignment and me being patient and taking the right step for me. Woods long knew about the record. I don't know how often in Backwoodz past an artist has shown up and been like, yo, I got a complete record with over a dozen visuals already. And Woods, like if this hip hop shit is on some X-Men shit, Woods might be up there on some Professor X Magneto
Hmm.
shit in terms of just like his top down view a lot of times on strategizing and also being pretty selfless because he could really just take the time and focus on what he's doing. It ain't like Woods is a fucking slouch. Like he's out here, he's out here Barry Bonds on these, you know what I'm saying? No Balco. Like he's out here, he's swinging them, you know. So the fact that he's also recognizing past himself, like yo, I'm gonna build something beyond just me and my ego. But yeah, it was just yeah, the timing, man. Yeah, the timing of everything, even how it came up. I posted out there on Twitter. That's how long I had the record or the bevy of it, you know. And I asked people who cared, like, what label should I put this out on? Because I didn't even know at that point I'd been indie so long. I didn't even know how people develop these relationships with these labels. The labels that reached out to me around private stock, it wasn't that they weren't interested. It was just kind of like they either couldn't wrap their heads around the business structure I was offering, or
Mm-hmm.
they were a little bit late. It's kind of like you want to participate, but you're late. So this wouldn't even benefit us both. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And from there, I didn't know what the proper means was to approach. Like, what do you do now? Slide in the label's fucking DMs? You know what I mean? It's
Mm.
like, or you wait for, Willy Wonka to send you the golden ticket, and you're like, and then also I started, more of my artistic peers started opening up to me like, yo, you think the grass is greener over here, but you actually made more money off your release than I did, even though I have a bigger digital footprint or I have
Mm.
more followers or whatever. And I didn't know that. Some of my artistic peers were signing record deals and pressing up vinyls and merchant or whatever physicals that were just in a warehouse in storage somewhere. And I was like, that's what's happened. That's what your deal was. They gave you a little bit of money and now you got a bunch of records in storage. I was like, fuck that. I'm not doing that.
Man, there's
You know
some
what I'm
crazy
saying?
things I hear about. Even like I'm obviously not going to name names here, but had a recent conversation with an artist where they're on a label where I thought like it wasn't like that. I thought like, oh, they're one of the good ones. And
Right.
even then, it's like, no, it's some like just some whack shit happened to some artist, and it's causing that person like impeding them to create, and
Yep.
it's so common. Like,
Woods was like, let me know what you want to do. And that's so empowering, man. And without even expanding on it, what he's also saying is, I trust your experience because I came there. I was like, look, this is what I've moved on my own units wise. This is what I want to amplify that. I never had support. I never had like a team of people on a, I'll be in a Google meet with like Backwoodz staff and like my business partner. We're all talking about my record. I've never had that before. And I don't know if I would have had that at a bigger label either. I don't
mm,
know if like a larger industry label could have written the bio and the information about me as an artist in the record that Backwoodz did, because I didn't know, I didn't even real Woods has observed me as an artist for like 10 years. They couldn't have said those things about me. I was like, oh shit, yeah, wow, okay, yeah, because Woods was there. He was already an active participant in the scene and in the culture, and I was on his radar, and he spotted me. It's just that I didn't even, maybe I took it for granted out of proximity. I didn't even think to approach Backwoodz. You know what I mean? And I'm glad that the higher powers didn't cloud my ego to be like, nah. I was like, when people on Twitter were like Backwoodz, that was one of the labels that came up a lot. Quelle and I were like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. And so much
mm,
of it was just homecoming and just felt like the right timing. I was like, oh, I am on a different type of time because everything is just kind of like lining up. And it also allowed me to be patient. The record, we were originally going to try to squeeze it in for fall of 2023, I believe, something like
mm.
that. Like they were going to try to drop it in September of 2023. And I'm so glad we didn't, because we needed that Blockhead album to come out, man, in November. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
it's a mosaic, man. I was like, yo, I needed to. I didn't know Fatboy Sharif until this Backwoodz endeavor. I didn't even know him. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, oh, I got to meet him and um be announced into the fold as Sharif's project was blossoming. You know what I mean? I got to observe that and feel like I was a part of something a bit bigger than just my record. It's like, oh, now we're putting bricks on a pyramid right here. Like we're building a monument right here. You know what I mean? If you look at the last year of releases from Backwoodz, now tell me something about why my album cost $70.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also really good timing. Like diabetic test strips drops, you have a very standout feature on that prior versus if it dropping after. It doesn't hit the
Yo, that was
same.
Woods, man. That was Woods, man. I'm telling you, man. Like, again, I already had the record done. Fans don't know that. Supporters, rather. They don't know that. A lot of them didn't know me. Woods allowed me to, he sent me beats. I asked him, I was like, yo, what do y'all want me to do? You want me to feature a verse? What's the idea? And he was like, do whatever you want. Like, that was how he responded. I was like, nah, you got to give me something, man. What's the
Mm,
album about? Because they were pretty hush hush about how they made it. I don't know if the listeners have really caught on to how Woods and Elucid made the record, right? That they didn't just go, it was very intentional. And that resonated with me too. I was like, this is the shit. They had the musicians like Child Actor, like Adi. They had these different musicians come and play together and
yeah.
jam. And then they took those and gave them to the producers they wanted to work with to make the beats. And so I didn't, it was kind of mysterious what I was even getting audio. Like I was like, what is this? Which track? He's like, whatever one speaks to you, he's kind of like that,
Hmm.
and I was like, all right, well, what do you want me to do? He's like, do whatever. And Elucid was in a similar energy. And at first I was like, damn. And I was like, all right, well, and I gave them the hook and the song. Like, this is the song. And I wasn't sure if and they were like, yep, that. And I was like, okay, bet. But I had no idea about the rest of the record, what it was called. None of that. None of that. So that was really Woods, again, showing investment in what he knew was coming. Like, they put me on tour with them from the run with Kenny Siegel from his solo record. I started going on tour with Woods from the Maps record and then got worked into the Arm& Hammer tour.
Yeah.
So he was already setting the audience up, which I think was really great.
Yeah, and I mean this concept of time and like things lining up and patience has come up like even by accident as you've been talking. It's been really fascinating, as you said. Like it kind of just
Mm-hmm.
worked its way out to where what this all was leading to. Why we're even talking today is this album, Different Type Time. And
Mm-hmm.
it really does feel like a real moment in the spotlight for you. And I think first of all, the fact that you were able to carry like 59-minute album on pretty much by yourself with some sparing features that we will talk about later is really impressive. It's not, people don't do that a lot these days, you know? And I
Uh,
think although the beats are fantastic, I also want to ask you about that. It's really your bars and your flows that are like the thing that, keeps me the most engaged. It's really
mm-hmm.
unbelievable, like the vocab in your lyrics. It's just it's so many ridiculous entendres and wordplay. It just really feels like you're like showing people what you're all about. And from your perspective, what did you want people to learn about you or your story from this new album after listening to it?
I'm not sure. I will say I wanted to show them that not just that this is what I'm all about, but that this is what this is all about. That it could be this layered and this engulfing and encompassing. It's the difference between, you know, a chance encounter on the train where someone bumps you or a chance encounter on the train where you had the most poignant conversation of your day you didn't expect to have. I wanted to recreate a moment for people beyond my experience, but where sharing my experience made them take the time to be in the experience, whether it's the experience of listening to me or in the experience they were having at that moment beyond me, like pumping the brakes on all of this shit for a second, because I had to do that to get right mentally, spiritually, to even feel like I'm okay with putting myself out there in the world right now, because I don't want to just be consumed or just perceived. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like, how do I do that? But I didn't want to complain about it either. I know myself. I'm gonna create. I rap in my crib every day, like that. You know, there's a Twitter rant that I went on in the when I started sharing more that I had a project coming out, and I started being more. This has all been me working on my reclusivity. I'm notoriously recluse, and that worked against me too in this era of like, oh, I thought Cav was gonna be the one to blow,
Right.
and I didn't want to take photos. People would be like, but again, like, oh, you got to look. And I'd be like, well, I don't want them to look at me. You know what I'm saying? So, no, I don't. I used to tell photographers no. You know what I'm saying? It took a homie of mine to be like, nah, you got to do photo shoots every 2 weeks, bro. But the way he framed it, he made it less about me trying to look cool and more about creating access points. That this was a new, you know, you
Like a
got to
new
create
way to
access
like
points.
express yourself?
Yeah, well, just that, like, I don't get to choose what people's access points are going to be to this, right? Someone might land on my website because they seen the Bring Back Weed Spot thing and didn't even know I rap. Someone may have heard me on diabetic test strips. Someone may have known me because they thought I played co-star to Quelle Chris, right? I have no control over the access points, but I can make all those access points rabbit holes to the universe I really am in. You know what I'm saying? And ultimately the goal is for people to feel connected to me regardless of if they can relate to my specific experience. We can watch a documentary about someone doing something profound and we don't have to know or be a part of their specific world or experience, but what they went through, we can connect with. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I wanted that. I wanted to make a demonstration of that because I being fully transparent, and I shared this a little bit on Twitter, but I had a moment where I thought I was having a nervous breakdown, like 2020. Not literally. I don't know if it was that. I've never had a panic attack, but the
Hmm.
things that I was doing normally that made me feel good about rap and this music shit wasn't feeling like that anymore. And then I was like, and then I had to step outside of my process and see what I was doing. I talked in an interview recently that people were like, well, were you not recording? I was like, no, I was recording all the time. But then I found myself, I was alone. I'm a single dad. I would record. I'm the type of person who could record a take and the take would be usable. But to me, that's not the take, right? So now I'm caught in this loop where I recorded 30 takes. They're all usable to somebody. And then I wake up in the morning and delete all 30 takes. You know what I'm saying? Because I was like, yo, it ain't right. But it's like you get caught up in that shit. That's not a healthy space. And I had to get to why that was happening. Like, why does it not feel the same? What is this for now? You know what I'm saying? Like, is this for me to pump shit out? Like, I don't make microwave shit. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? I like this, you don't go to a fucking 5-star restaurant and be like, you know what? Give me the food from last week in the foil, heat that up, throw it in a little bag, and just give me, I'm gonna walk out of here with that. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't want to squeeze myself into a role or a framework that didn't resonate with me. And I had to figure out how to present what I'm on.
I mean, this album really does feel like an exercise of patience and presence. And even just aesthetically, how you structure the album, there's this really cool feeling that it's like liquid, like it's very
Mm,
temporal. There's like some beat switches, even the transitions from track to track. It almost feels like, and even there are like a few songs. Maybe it's I think it's Deja Vu Tidro,
hmm.
where it's
Yeah,
like
Tiger
it
97.
does feel
Hmm.
like you're kind of going through a dream sequence and you're kind of like
Yes,
changing where you're going. There's like a teleportative quality, if that's even a word. And
yes,
I do think you just like achieve that almost like in a meta way where and even just the idea it is also going to the structure. It's a longer album than I think people are used to in our kind of current day and space. So it's
yes.
really asking you to participate,
I did the
invest.
opposite of what everyone told me to do on the internet. I did the opposite of all the Spotify. And again, half the people telling you this stuff don't make any music.
Hmm.
More than half. Like the video with Shorty being like, yo, this is not the era for 20 tracks. Do you make music? No. You know what I'm saying? And it's not like I gave people 20 tracks of 5-minute songs. Ali produced a song on there, Up From Here. The song is like 12 bars,
Hmm.
maybe. But I didn't shortchange you on the message. You know what I mean? Even with the track you mentioned, Hydro 97, that was intentional because, shout outs to Ty. Tydro Elite is a rapper that in the mixtape era and in the G Unit era, right? We had that mixtape, especially in New York, especially in certain regions in America. Mixtapes were where you found the pulse of what was hot, and it was a pipeline into the industry too, especially in that G Unit Dipset dominance, right?
Yeah.
And Tydro was part of a duo in Papooses camp. So a lot of people knew him and knew those artists from that. But it's funny because, you know, Ty now, we're adults. In that era, we would have never crossed paths because of how we're delineated. I would have been considered conscious rap, or he would have been considered gangster rap, or whatever,
Yeah.
right? But a lot of us rappers know each other. That's what people don't realize and listen to each other, right? We hear about after the fact about how Dr. Dre was listening to A Tribe Called Quest, and that's what inspired the sound on the Chronic, right? But if you were a kid or whatever, you were a young adult, maybe, I don't know, listening to that, you might not have associated, you wouldn't have thought that Tribe Called Quest and Dr. Dre were listening to each other,
Hmm.
right? I'm not in I'm not in that mixtape era, but I'm not in that like Another Brother's Talent. That clip is of him in the street in 1997 rapping, a rare found clip. It was a video of him. that I have permission. I know him in real life. And we found out over the years how many people we actually did have in common, even though our entry points to the industry seemed like they were on completely different poles, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, Messiah Music produced Deja Vu. And when Ty found that clip, I was like, yo, I need that, bro. I'm putting that on my record because it was just time is not linear, man. That's what we're seeing. Woods is proof of that. History will absolve me. Well, no, now his future is absolving him. You know what I'm saying? So I was in that. I was like, nah, this shit is like this now because you could go on YouTube and you could be a young producer and make a dope beat and go get an acapella of Meek Mill when he was a kid and throw it on the beat now. And it's some new shit.
Mm.
There's nothing more postmodern than that, yo. So I'm kind of like, nah, man, I'm about to show you how this time machine really works because we still catching up to the cultural implications of a lot of this stuff.
Man, that's so well said. And you know, speaking to that idea of like the message not being shortchanged even when the track's so short, I was really impressed with that diversity of the subject matter on this album because there is so many tracks and you're tackling, but yet you're tackling these topics with still an amount of depth and nuance and precision in your lyrics. And
Mm,
probably my favorite song on here and perfect example of this is Touchtones. You
mm.
got one of the most beautiful bars of the year where you say like intuited your middle name like it was inscribed in in my birth song. And I just find the way you kind of dance over the beat, it's just such a phenomenal moment. And speaking to the subject matter a bit more, like what were some of the main ideas you set out to explore specifically on this record? Is it that concept of time
Wow.
generally?
I think it was not just time as much as it was how key moments fit in my timeline of how I experienced love and connection. I was in Oakland and I was listening to that track a lot. Shout outs to Alma who produced that. And when I think his original track, the name of it had something related to like a phone or something like that. And I listened to it and it just was haunting me. He sent me another track from my album and I had to be like, yo, man, this track is dope, but I really need that track because it's like keeping me up at night. You know what I'm saying? And he was kind enough to send it to me. And then I listened to it and this just sounds so random, but like I was listening to it and I was sitting in Oakland and this bird flew by and the sun hit it in its eye and its eye sparkled and it was almost like a moment of enlightening. Like I was like, that's us, yo. That
Hmm.
brief, that's what love be like that moment to connect, that brief spark. It's like so beautiful and so temporal. You know what I'm saying? Because when you remember a relationship outside of how it made you feel generally, you remember the small things. You remember those small moments that you couldn't script on your own. It required the other person in your life for them to happen because your imagination wouldn't have maybe taken it there unknown to. So when I talk about like intuited your middle name like it was inscribed in my birth song, that really happened to me. I really did have a lover that when she left my home and she left her bracelet behind, I held it and I was like, what's this word? And I called her and she was like, that's my middle name. I never told you. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, oh, all right. It's proof of life here. You know what I'm saying? So
Hmm.
that's what I was trying to get at, those a pastiche of those kind of moments and figuring out how to relay that in a song to get that feeling. And I felt like the composition he gave me musically gave me a palette to do that.
100%. I really find that's also one of my favorite beats here too. And I don't even know why, what exactly it is specifically, but the drums, just the little,
Yeah, it
it's
fucks with your
haunting.
heart rate.
Yeah, it's
It
haunt.
fucks with your
Yeah,
heart rate. Yeah.
yeah,
And
it's
and
haunting.
that's
You're
what
right.
that's what those encounters do, right? You see somebody you love or you like, or you don't know why you love them. Your fucking body reacting, your heart is moving arrhythmically. And
Hmm.
that beat, a lot of rappers wouldn't have chose that beat to put on their album, yo. I don't think so. And low key, this whole project is also my thank you to the beat community, man. I've been very fortunate to be accepted by the producers and beat makers who that don't need rappers on their shit to have a career. They don't. Obliv does not have to have any rappers on his beats at all, at all. So that's a badge. If he's saying, yeah, you can use my shit, Malik Abdul Rahman does not need any rappers on his beats. And I could go down the line. Ali doesn't need any rappers on his
Mm-hmm.
beats. You see what I'm saying? So, you know, I put together whole projects with people like Iman Omari and Quelle that also don't need rappers on their beats. I've
Yeah.
been in the room with there was a period through Private Stock where I'd be the only rapper in the room. You know, I'm in there with jazz musicians like Melanie Charles or Christian Scott. I'm the only rapper. So I have to be like, what is allowing me to function in this space? I look up to Cab Calloway. I feel like I'm in his lineage. He didn't play any instruments, but he coined a lot of the slang for jazz, and he was the band leader, and he's like the poet laureate of jazz, and he came up with the dance moves and all that shit to the point where like this whole cartoons that are based on his existence. Like when you see like old cartoons and there's like a cat with a zoot suit on and all that type of shit, and like that's all Cab Calloway. That's his impact.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And he's fucking singing about smoking weed. So I'm like, all right, that's clearly the lineage I'm in. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, but this is my like DiBiase. What people don't know is he quietly helped orchestrate a lot of those collaborations. Vinny Cousins, Ruffy and Kick. Vinny Cousins is on the record because of DB. In fact, there's a subtle DiBiase shout out in the beat. Ruffy and Kick is on there because of DiBiase. For show that produced Told You is on there because of DiBiase. And DiBiase's not even on the record. Not because I had a song that I did on one of DB's beats. It just somehow didn't make it in the process. I have other
Mm.
songs I've done on DiBiase beats, but he's key in helping me find the co-stars to deliver in the sound. And it's just again part of like, some of these producers deserve placements on records that are in the canon. And that
Yeah.
was that was like, I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna make a real record. I'm gonna put them on real records now. This ain't just not minimizing a beat set or a beat tape, but like, nah, you got that dope ass beat set and that beat tape, and you're on this record forever.
Speaking of the beats and the sound a bit more, something I was definitely very impressed with is just how you were able to, as you said, you kind of collated such a large amount of different producers into this sound that really feels incredibly cohesive, flows really well, and yet always feels, soulful, warm, and some points like kind of psychedelic and a bit just like off in a good way. How
Mhm.
did you manage to stitch together all these beats into a consistent piece? And like, what was that kind of overarching sound you were looking to even cultivate?
I don't know. I think I went with what felt right. Like it was a feeling. Um, I tend to rap on pitch. I don't know if that was a factor. Or excuse me, rap in key.
Hmm.
Which is something more singers tend to do that. Quelle does that a bit too, actually. But I rap in key. So I don't know. Maybe I need to sit. I don't know if a musician could
What does
could
that mean
gauge
to
if a
rap in
lot.
key?
So if the beat is in E minor, like my vocal tone will be in E. You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? Like that type of shit. Which is why something like Can't Leave It Alone plays out the way that it plays out. Because Eric J is really singing on there, and there's a lot of layered, lush vocals, and it could have become a song where that part was really big, and then the rapper came on, and you got disappointed. You know what I'm saying? And I was like, nah, that's not gonna happen because this is one thing. So I had
Hmm.
to go with really not just what felt right, but to not be lazy, man. Like, cause when you rap for a while, I could make a lot of different types of rap, but I wanted to make this. You know what I mean? Like I needed to be thoughtful about the fact that I know that we tend to exist in the headier corners of hip hop, but could I play this for my mom and she think it's a good listen, who's like an immigrant and who doesn't understand all the nuances of American English, hip hop, urban dialect. You know what I'm saying? And apparently it does. My mom heard 50 bags. I was like, oh shit. My sister played 50 bags for like my mom, grandmother, and my aunt. I was like, what are you doing? Like, you know what I'm saying? But you know, and not only that, my mom heard the record and heard parts where I even referenced her, which means that even in the dense lyrics and the speed of delivery, she was the music allowed her to be immersed to actually catch that. So that meant I was doing my job musically.
I mean this as a compliment when I say that sometimes listening to your music and listening to this album specifically because you had sent me in advance, so
Mm-hmm.
I didn't talk about it with anybody for a while, but I was listening to it, right? And when people
Mm-hmm.
started to when the album dropped and people were talking about it, people are like obviously raving about how, just how dense some of the lyricism is, how like all these double entendres, all these crazy things you're doing. And I actually kind of like noticed myself being like, I don't like I listened to it again as soon as I was starting to read some of that commentary and I'm like, oh yeah, that's totally true. But like it's not that I didn't appreciate it. It's just that like I find you're really the way you rap is so easy to understand, yet it's pretty sometimes pretty complex how you're putting it all together. So like I don't
Mm-hmm.
even really clock it as being like complex, super dense because you just do it in a way that's very palatable and like that's what I find very
Hopefully,
fascinating.
yeah, I've worked on that because it's very easy to classify us as like alternative and all of that. And sometimes when, depending on who's doing that, they're moving you away. They're moving you away from the center as if a broader audience wouldn't fuck with you. You know what I'm saying? And there's sometimes truth to that. Sometimes I've seen artists, people that have made music that the content, what they were talking about was deep, but the music wasn't palatable for people, you
Hmm.
know? And I like a conversational kind of delivery a bit. Um, but I want you to be able to come back to it too and discover something, you know, and be like, oh shit, I didn't even realize. Oh, that's what he said. Like, I love that.
Oh, that
I
happens a
love
lot.
that.
That happens a lot.
And
Trust me.
sometimes that has worked against me where maybe I put too much sugar in the medicine and they didn't realize I was like, do you see I'm barring the fuck up? Like, I remember one time Quelle and I had a conversation when he made guns. And I think when Quelle made guns, he was kind of letting the heads know, like, don't get it twisted. Y'all want to write about me like I'm this quirky comic avant-garde rap artist producer. Like I don't be barring the fuck up on y'all.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And I wanted to demonstrate bar work without this overtly ambitious. I'm trying to demonstrate bar work
Yeah.
because the lyrics are coming from a real place. I'm most inspired when I'm writing from a real place. A lot of the moments are real. The name drops are real. You know what I'm saying? The references are real. And so that part, yes, I can tap there, but how do I give it to you in a way that's both connecting and and this is entertainment too, though, right?
Hmm.
It's still music. Like you gotta like enjoy it. You know what I mean? Or at least an elucid tend to tackle difficult subject matter, man. You know what I'm saying? In these records. And they got people tuned in. I think people really need to study the alchemy of that. They're not just, it's not, again, these are writers like Woods could write anything probably. Chaz could probably write anything. Elucid, you know what I mean? They're, they're choosing to use music to deliver like a lot. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I wanted to be able to do that too in my way,
And I think
especially following up records like Diabetic Test Strips, you know?
100%. Yeah, and another thing that you get to showcase on different type time is your keen feel for visuals. Because as you mentioned, you made videos for almost every track on this record.
Mm-hmm.
And you've built this, I think, as like an audio and visual experience. So talk to me about how integral the approach to the visuals are and just generally are for your music, but specifically this album, as it relates to your overall creative process and even like specifically the style that you film these videos, because there is a definitely some unique choices in some of these videos.
Absolutely. So people after Chief, I think, started to take notice. I think by private stock, they realized that I was behind the visuals that were accompanying my work. Only more recently have I been stating that. Um, and in this particular project, the visuals started before some of the songs did. And it's because you know, in the pandemic, I partnered with this artist and filmmaker named Upendo Kushandana from New Orleans, who, in my opinion, is just a true artist spirit. Is someone who creates for the true impetus of creating, something for their soul. And he saw the state of mind I was in when I was discussed earlier about like I wasn't sure how I was feeling about this, about the creative process, but I make things. And it was an old camera in my crib, one that I would have discarded as being useless. And he was like, "Oh, you got that camera there. You could take some pictures." And I was like, "Nah, that's an old camera. That's some bullshit." And he was like, "Yo, it's still a camera." He was kind of hit. That's how you know how pure of an artist space he was coming from.
Yeah.
And what that allowed me to do more than I realized at the time was it was therapy. I started it. It forced me to step back, take my time, learn something new. All the visuals that I had done for previous projects, I didn't have to be behind the camera. I could
Okay.
produce and direct and write. I would write these visuals. I would scout shooters and work with them. I would direct. I would produce all of this visual content, but I wasn't filming it. So he put me on to doing time lapse and specifically time lapse through photos where you got to really be patient and you also have to trust the process. You don't know the result you're going to get. And that, as a person who wanted control then, that was like a lot to wrap my head around. You got to sit there and take 500, 600, 700 photos just to get 30 seconds of playback. You know what I'm saying? That happened and I was like, okay, this is something here. And then we started doing more of that. And then I was like, oh, well, now I wrote this. This kind of goes with that. It's like the visuals started coming before some of the songs.
Wow.
And I was like, oh, okay. Because I tend to think like that anyway. But now I'm having a real time tool to deal with the fact that I'm thinking like that. And now I'm shooting more. And I'm shooting with Upendo. And now I'm talking to these producers like Fresco, who lives in Dallas. And I'm like, now I'm going to come to Dallas. You know what I mean? Or I'm going to go to Oakland. I'm going to go to this city. I'm going to just go there. I'm gonna show up in your hood. I'm gonna go to Philly. I'm gonna go to where Wino Willie's from, where his grandmother's mural is. Yo, you gave me a beat. All right, I'm gonna go where your grandmother was, and I'm gonna put her in the visuals for the song for the beat you gave me, cause you were part of her legacy, right? And you gave me the beat. All right, cool. Now she's in the legacy record too. If they ever
Wow.
paint over that mural, it's forever in the art because it's in the All Things Considered video for the song he produced. That process, had I not done that, bro, I wouldn't have met the men who are on the album. Because in moving around and filming and taking these pictures and taking my time, that's how I even met the unhoused men that ended up on the record. I wouldn't even have been there if I didn't just trust my gut and do that and allow the process to take shape the way it was. So the album is evidence to something I was actually experiencing, that I had to really take my time and do that to just to let it happen. That the album wouldn't have happened if I didn't do that.
Yeah, it's again another example of the your experience making this an experience. It just kind of reinforces one or the other. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the concept of time, again, it just keeps coming up. Even fucking just the concept, I mean the tool or the what do you call it, the function of the time lapse. Like it's just
Yeah.
it's very uncanny.
Because I'm
And
standing still. And those
yeah.
visuals, a lot of times, like when we're making them, and especially in some of these places, bro, not places you're supposed to be standing still. Some of those visuals I did in neighborhoods people would not go to, especially to show up with equipment or whatever.
Mm,
And I'm not going there to do poverty porn or anything like that at all. Quite the contrary. Some of those areas, I'm good in them areas. I caught permission from certain people in those areas to be all right or to be protected. But while I'm filming that, I have to be still while fucking madness is happening around me. Drug addiction, crime, literally. I was in San Francisco filming for Doodle Damien and like amongst 40, 50, 60 addicts and 7, 8, 9 dealers, surrounding me. Watch what you doing. I'm filming. What you filming? You know what I'm saying? And I could tell them and they respect it and be like, oh, all right. And they standing around me. That's what you don't see.
mm.
They're standing around me, watching, whatever. I'm not documenting your crime, but yo, if you out here doing this, I got just as much of a fucking right to be here as you. And they have to respect it. Word, you are you okay? You know what I'm saying? So that was part of it too. Like, oh yeah, you think how real is it for you? That's you know what I'm saying? That's like you telling me about $70, motherfucker. I was in places where you might get hurt.
Hmm. Wow. And you mentioned the Unhoused Brothers. I'd like to talk about that in relation to just the features because they were at a minimum, but they weren't completely apps. And you have some singers on here, and then you have
Mhm,
those two that
mhm.
are given a spot to actually rap on this record. So, what drove you to handle the features in the way you did, and particularly the inclusion of those Unhoused Brothers on the album?
In making the project, it came through a lot of solitude and processing I needed to process, and I couldn't make that in anyone else's responsibility, even Quelle, because Quelle would have jumped on anything I told him to or asked him to, I'm sure. Yeah, and he's there with me, helping me execute the sound in ways that I can't, because that's more in his skill set, production wise. But I could tell Quelle, yo, I got these elements, and he understands me creatively, you know. But I started working on a lot of these songs and dealing with what I wanted to express on my own. So it didn't require initially any collaborators, at least lyrically, you know.
Hmm.
But in tapping into that space of being true to the moment and being present tense time and receiving that, the brother on Baby I'm Home, he came and started talking to me while we were filming a time lapse in Detroit on our way out. And I shared in an interview recently how both of those unhoused men, I encountered them on the same day, even though they were in two different cities. So to me, that was already uncanny. Cities that are
Hmm.
not near each other, by the way. I was in Detroit, which is in the north, in the Midwest, and then I was in Dallas, which is all the way in the south. I didn't know I was going to be in Detroit that long. We had a long layover, and I told my collaborator, Upendo, fuck it, let's leave the airport, let's film, let's shoot around. I called a friend in Detroit, and you know, and it's something I don't know what it was. I was walking around Detroit. Now, mind you, Detroit is a city with all kinds of reputations. I was walking around Detroit, and everywhere we went, people were just stopping me in the street, man. Like, yo, man, like I don't know what was on me
Like,
that
did
day.
they know you?
Nah, I don't think so. They was just stopping me to talk to me, like, just, yo, man, like all kinds of people. So on our way out, we're waiting for our ride back to the airport, and that's when that gentleman came and started talking to me. And he saw us filming. I guess that's what caught his attention. That is what caught his attention. He asked what we were filming. I told him that my boy was filming, the architecture. And then he went into like, we all built that. Pyramids was built. And, he went on that wave. And I didn't dismiss him. I just was like, word. And we started chopping it up. And then midway through, he revealed to me, he was like, usually people don't talk to me because I'm homeless. And I was like, I didn't even know you was homeless. You're just older black man, I'm respectful. You came talk, we started chopping it up. And that's when he invited us to come see him sing at a church. And that's when I was like, hey, we waiting for an Uber. We've been here 6 hours. We about to leave. And that's when you hear him, and that's the tail end of the conversation on the record. He asked me, he's like, well, you mind if I do something for you right now? And I was like, yeah, go ahead.
Hmm.
And I thought he was gonna sing, bro. Because that's what he was talking about, asking us to come see him do it some church. And I thought he was gonna sing. And then he was like, Ricky Ricardo,
Proto.
baby. And I was like, oh shit. And I just couldn't fucking believe it. You know what I'm saying? So I left there. I didn't know how to process that at first. I just took it for what it was. I filmed him. I just left it alone. I didn't know it was gonna be on the record. I was just like, all right. We fly to Dallas, and I pull up to Link for show at an event. He was doing a small event, playing beats. I don't think anyone at the event knew that like randomly I was gonna pull up. Like, because when I got there, people were like, "Is that Cav that just walked in here?" And I was like, "Yeah, He was like, "What the fuck?" And afterwards, I went to Link for show in an area called Deep Ellum, where there's bars and places to hang out. But we didn't have much time, and we were just kicking it in the street. And when we all gathered, within minutes of us gathering there, two unhoused men started walking towards us. One of them started screaming towards me, not angrily, but he was like, I know you, you rap, right?" And I was like, nah, this ain't real, man. I was like, you don't know me, man. He's like, I know you rap, right? And I was like, yeah. And that's when he was getting at me like, yo, spit that pain. That's what he told me. And I was kind of like taken aback. I didn't know what to do. And I was like, yo, man, I was like, let me hear. And then he rapped for like 8 minutes, man.
Wow.
And he poured his heart out and told his story about his life and where it was at that moment. And, we went back to our Airbnb and I just had to process that shit. Like, what the fuck happened today, man? What's on me today? Because you don't have to believe in God, whatever, but something happened today. You know what I mean? And no one would have believed me if I just tried to tell them to it like that. But we got both encounters on tape. and other people were
Wow.
there. That man came and rapped. He was talking to me. There was a group of like 7, 8 people there, but he came to me and gave me all of that and then left. And I wish I knew his name. I don't know those two men's name. I don't know their names, right? So that could have been temporal and gone, but now it's not.
That's beautiful, man. Yeah, that, yeah. I really just think once again, like you really throughout the process, because you were so intentional with it, I just think the results are a beautiful thing on different type time. Like, yeah. Wow.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
Uh, and looking forward here, and I actually like, right hot off the press, someone in the Discord for the Patreon group like put this in it so I can ask you about it. It's pretty nice.
Mhm.
Timing. About upcoming projects. I know you're going to talk about, like, I know you have the tour about to go on, and any kind of
Mhm.
merch you want to call out. But I do want to mention specifically because Quelle recently posted on Instagram about that he's like joining you on the tour you're doing with Rap Ferreira, and he was talking about some few things, and he mentions at the end, and we may have some copies of a Death Tape Part Two.
Mhm.
So you want to tell me anything about that?
Yeah. So the tour that's a second tour. That's a different tour. My tour with Rory, shout out to Rap Ferreira. My tour with Rap Ferreira ends, and the very next day I do dates with Denmark and Quelle. We're gonna need each other tour, and that's Death Tape 2, which prominently features Denmark.
Oh.
Um, yeah. So just shout outs to Quelle, man. He was wise enough to make Death Tape a series and to include me to be part of the A team in that, especially knowing that we didn't even plan to make Death Tape 1 at all. Like I literally showed up at Quelle's crib, again, just trusting my gut, having no intentions to record even. We were gonna go work on tour footage from his tour. And somehow in 3 days, we made Black Cottonwood from start to finish. Every beat, all the bars, the pictures, the album cover, and the website. Unplanned.
And
I
the
sent out,
website shit.
yeah, and I sent out the tweet and delivered the album like days later, man. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, Death Tape 2 is coming very soon. Um, I also have a really, really beautiful project. I'm not quite sure when we're going to be able to release it to the world because we're both releasing material. But shout outs to my brother Raz Fresco, man.
Mm.
Um, I had a similar moment with him where we had spoken again. DiBiase, DiBiase connected us, yo.
I
And
was thinking about Raz when you mentioned DB. I'm like, he
yo,
must have been involved. Yeah.
DiBiase connected us. He was like, "You gotta link Raz, man. You gotta link. I'm telling you, the brother Raz." And I think I'd heard about Raz. I seen him on in a video on one of DB's beats or something like that. But we overlap in some other spaces. We overlap in some of our spiritual uh anchorings. We overlap in our Ralph Lauren appreciation. We overlap in a lot of space. Our love for hip hop, and he's a very forward thinking brother. And I told him I was like, look, man, I'm real on this shit. Like I pull up on niggas. Like I pull up. And he was like, word, word, word. And sure enough, I was like, nigga, now I'm in his crib in Toronto. You know what I'm saying? And he was gracious enough to allow me in his space. And the same thing happened. I was there a matter of days and left with a whole record with him that we plan on dropping called Run to the Mountain. I'm just not sure when we're going to drop it, but I think for both of us, it's a special release. And I think Raz Fresco fans will also like to see this from him because of where he's taking it on this project. And he produced everything. You know what
Okay.
I mean? And he's such a prolific artist, you know what I mean, with his output. But I think this is a different lens into who he is. And you know what I mean? So I have a project with Raz Fresco, release date to be determined. I have a whole project with Child Actor.
Oh my
Um,
God. Yeah, I think I saw that on Twitter. That's
yeah,
crazy.
I'm really excited about that because Quelle and I guess indirectly Elucid put me onto Child Actor. When I was on tour with Quelle, Elucid dropped his record in 2022, summer of 2022. And we played that record on tour, like spelling, Betamax, like we was running them shits into the ground. I was like, this record is phenomenal. And I
Yeah.
realized that, in my opinion, the cornerstone of that record is Child Actor,
Oh, you're
the chemistry
100%
that we
right.
have.
You're not the only
You
one
know
who
what I'm
said that.
saying?
I fully agree.
I was like, man, I was like, what fucking chamber did they tap into? So that happens. And I think it was on that same tour that maybe Quelle was like, I got some child actor beat. My fault, I'm impersonating everybody.
I know, I've noticed
But
that. I've clocked that a little bit.
I think he might have sent me that first batch or helped orchestrate that. And child actor, I got these beats, and they were all dope. And one of them was called Red Anju, which is a type of pear. And I had pears on the beat,
Mm.
right? And just a little quick detraction. So Malik Abdul Rahman had produced pears and put it out as just an instrumental, unrelated to me, and put it out on YouTube or wherever. And in his version of the track, he samples Rick Ross in an interview talking about losing weight by eating pears, right? That's why it's called pears because it's a fucking hilarious interview. And
Is
then
that the one where he says pears in a really weird way?
he's like pears,
Yeah,
it's eating a
that's
lot of pears, right?
classic,
So
classic.
Malik takes that and puts that on his instrumental. And I was like, that's funny, but I love the instrumental. And he was kind enough to give me, it was stuck in my head and he gives me that beat. And I was like, fuck it, pears. That's that's what it is. It's just pears. No one will know. Those who are fans of Malik and his music, they might know. You know what I mean? But that's what. So then I get this child actor beat, and it's called Red Anju, which is another type of a pear. And I was like, it's a sign. It's got to be a sign. You know what I mean? And I the a lot of the song just came to me. And when I shared it with Quelle while we were on tour, he was taping it like on his phone, and I could see his reaction while he was taping it, and he sent it to Child Actor, and
Wow.
Child Actor reacted, and I was like, okay, this is a thing, and I was like, I think something about the the way the spacing and the beat and what I was doing, I was like, there's a chemistry here, there's something here, that's one of the few recordings on the album that the demo version became the song, like that version of 50 Bags, that's my demo. Like
Wow, that's
every other song,
crazy.
yeah,
That's crazy.
that was me showing Max, showing Child Actor, like, yo, this is my idea for the song. This is how it go. And I'm like, I just sat down and recorded it in my workroom in my crib. Like to the point that in the actual recording, while I was recording it, like thunder had struck really loudly. And it's in the recording. You know what I mean? And when that happened, I was just like, it's like a Bob Marley moment. I was like, nah, that's how real this shit is. Like, you know? So I sent it to him. I was like, yo, I'm gonna have to re-record it. Fucking Thunder came. And he was like, everyone, him, Quelle, the way they all reacted to that song, I was like, okay, yeah, this is a thing. This is a thing. So that birthed and then this past summer at the Arm& Hammer pop-up where they began to present me, I got to meet Child Actor in person. And by that point, he had already sent me beats that I was already tinkering with, and we had little murmur conversations. And I guess Woods heard us talking about that, and he perked up like, "Oh, you guys have a," and I was like, "Yeah, I kind of already been working on some of his beats." He was like, and I was like, "Okay, this is a thing." And then I turned around and did a bunch of them. So I have a whole album with Child Actor right now.
That's amazing. I
It's
am
my
so
first time in a
excited for that.
while. Yeah, it's first time in a while doing a project with just one producer.
Yeah, I Child Actor is one of my favorite producers ever right now. So he's I'm so excited and
Me too.
just generally it's really cool hearing you kind of open up to with all this because it's just fascinating how serendipitous a lot of this stuff seems to be with you. And I just think that just means you're taking the right path. You're following the right kind of
I'm on
energy.
a different type time, man. I allowed myself to be open to that, and again, just trusting my gut. And I encourage all artists to do the same, yo. If it don't feel right, don't do it, man. If it's not putting that thorn in your brain, if it's not moving you in your chest, yo, that's the shit. That's where I'm at with it. That's what made me show up in Toronto 11 days after surgery. You know what I'm saying? Like people are like, yo, you're bugging. I was like, nah, son told me I gotta go do that. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go do that. And you were there, sold out, snowing, Toronto, January. Those typically details don't line up to sold out show.
Hmm.
I had people coming up to me at that show and was like, that's the best opening set I've ever seen ever.
I heard that from a
You
lot of
know?
people. I heard so many people. I think I told you that day that like people are like, "Oh, I don't know who this is," but that was crazy. I'm gonna go check out his shit. I saw someone buy your record, like Black Cottonwood, and they didn't know who you the fuck you were like an hour
Yep.
ago.
That's
Yeah.
that's what I wanted. That's what I wanted. So that's what's in that record. Like, if I could make Joe Biden give everyone a stimulus check for $100 to buy my record, I would do that. You know what I'm saying? Because again, it ain't about the bread. It's about us participating in something.
Yeah.
And those who were at the show runs, they get it. They saw how much I care. They saw how much Woods cares, how much Elucid cares. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's why I resonated with them because they didn't know who I was. A lot of these people on some of these tour dates, but they knew when I left. They knew not just who I was, but what I was a part of.
Right. Right, man. I mean, I'm so excited for what you have upcoming. Like all those records sound crazy, but I think keeping with the theme of presence, like different type time, I think is such an impressive body work. Definitely right up
Thank
there
you.
with the album of the year contenders. Well worth the
I
wait.
hope so. I'm
And
hoping people also process it through the year. I don't want them to just like, I heard it. There's a lot in there, and hopefully by summer we'll start to disperse the visual version of it because I don't think just pissing away my work on YouTube is the way to go. I'm gonna put things on there, but I think I want to have a more controlled environment on that part of the experience as well.
is it going to be like a standalone piece, like a kind of a bigger
Yeah,
video?
I think we're gonna do a DVD.
Oh,
So
wow.
it's
That's
like
really
a
cool.
Yeah, and mind you, I know, I don't have a DVD player. Well, first of all, gamers definitely have a DVD player because their PlayStations and their whatever's definitely will play DVD. And just like what I said to before, people buy our cassette that don't have cassette players. People buy our vinyls that don't have record players. And similarly, those come with the digital component. And my DVD will be no different. Because that's part of the ritual of this telemetry that I'm working at, right? Where here's the analog and here's the digital, and you can be with me in deja vu, and you can be with Ty in 1997 at the same time.
That's beautiful. That's amazing. I'm excited for this DVD. That's going to be really cool. And I luckily have one of like the last version of the MacBook. I just souped it up with like a 2 terabyte solid
Mm,
state, but I still got the CD drive, so
yeah, man.
I'd be
I
golden.
went and bought one recently. I went and bought an external DVD. I can't believe I'm doing it. I went and bought an external DVD drive.
Mm,
Not just for my project, because I realized the importance of archives. And I've had to move around a lot since moving to the city I reside in New Orleans. And I was like, yo, I'm throwing away all these DVDs, and then I found some that had me on them. You know what I'm saying? Like performances and shit. And I was like, nah, man, I'm going to archive these things.
yeah.
They're not obsolete because the technology changed. Sorry about that. Can you hear me still?
Oh yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, you kind of were muted, but I got the last bit of that. Um, but yeah, man, I just appreciate you being so open in this conversation and, providing all this insight on how you do what you do. This has like been a great conversation. So thank you so much.
No, Matt. Thank you, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll leave it there. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day and yeah, excited for this to come out. I think people enjoy it.
Me too. Me too, man. Thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
Peace, man. Take care.
Peace.
So there we have it, another episode of the Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV. I hope this episode gave you some new perspectives and insights into what the greatest art form known to man in hip-hop music has to offer. If you want to support the show in the most meaningful way possible, it would be my absolute honor to have you as a patron in the new Rap Music Plug podcast Patreon. Through this Patreon, you will be getting exclusive content such as bonus episodes, exclusive album recommendations, exclusive playlists, early access to episodes, and more. And above all, though, you will be able to support the show directly in a way that will not only justify the crazy amount of time I spend on this show already, but allow me to cover some of the expenses related to supporting all of these great artists that we cover on the show through the website, and will allow us to sustain and build on this amazing growth that the RMPP has experienced recently. So if you have any questions about any of the Patreon stuff, or just want to keep tabs on the show, interact with me on rap music and all the great stuff that we can talk about, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at rapmusicplugpod, or shoot me an email at qlctv.podcast@gmail.com. You can also rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify as well. But that's enough self-promotion for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace.